One last stunt. Going down in a blaze of glory.
We need a big finale.
How many takes do you have of that?
I've got 5 takes.
So big.
I wanted to dive in. The film has gotten rousing reception so far after premiering at South by Southwest. What has it been like for the film to be so embraced, so loved so soon?
It's crazy. I've never experienced anything like South by. It was probably the best viewing of a movie, whether I've been involved with it or not, that I've ever been a part of. It was, yeah, it was, the crowd went nuts. I mean, they were clapping at everything, they were laughing at everything. It was just, they were the perfect audience.
That's amazing. I'm so glad. No, I feel like it's resonated with a lot of people so far. I want to ask, so you've worked with a number of directors, and I imagine the collaboration between composer and director looks different depending on the film and the director. You've previously worked with David Leitch on Bullet Train. What do your collaborations with him look like, and how do they differ from your work with other directors, excuse me?
Um, yeah, it's very different with Dave. It feels very special. I feel like we hit it off from the minute we had that first Zoom on Bullet Train. The processes of the each movie are very different, but just the trust both ways is second to none. And he's so giving as a director. He's always best idea wins. Um and not only does he trust me with the music, but I mean on Bullet Train I had an idea, it was a musical idea, but it affected the storyline of the movie. So and he took it on board and it turned out it was going to work, and he kind of changed a few things around so it had a through line. And that's the kind of guy he is. He's so collaborative, um, so easy to work for, and a joy to work with. Um, so yeah, it's very it becomes hard to work with other people because the experience with David Kelly is just so wonderful. And I just want to do it all the time. But it takes time to make movies, so I can't just keep doing it.
Yeah. No, but I'm glad to hear that the collaboration was really, really healthy, organic, and collaborative. You've recently helmed music for a number of action films, Violent Night, The Kingsman, Bullet Train, you mentioned. What is it about the action genre that appeals to you, and how do you ensure that the score for something like The Fall Guy is a homage to other films while also being unique, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I don't know how I ended up in action. It was it was never the intention. I was always, when I was ghostwriting for people and doing additional music, I was always the guy doing, the heartfelt underscore and the big sweeping kind of emotional cues. So it's kind of weird to me that I've ended up as this action guy. I think the reason being is because I'm really trying to do action in a different way. Um, and there's a lot of stereotypical action music out there, and I don't enjoy doing that. I'm not as good at as other people at doing that. Um, so I th that working with Dave really kind of set that whole idea alight. And he's primarily a very needle drop guy. He loves his needle drops, and so our process is like, how do we get the feeling of a needle drop, but also tell story way better than a needle drop can? Um,
Hmm.
because the needle drops are so specific, it can give you maybe one or two emotions, but you can't shift through all the different things you need to
Hmm.
shift through. So, that's a big thing for us. And then specifically to the Fall Guy, you have this existing material of I Was Made for Loving You by Kiss. So I had to extrapolate things from that song that would work in a score environment. So it was the guitar riff from the beginning of the song, the vocal melody in the chorus, and the kind of disco bass line. And so then when you weave that in with the score, you get that like needle drop feel to it, but it's also, you can shift it and play with it and make it do different things. It can be mysterious, it can be emotional. Um, and that was a big thing on this movie. I Was Made for Loving You was kind of always Dave's North Star. Even back when it was way like Kiss was way bigger in the script. It was kind of all the way through the script. It had a much more important role to play in the movie. That didn't end up happening, but Dave's North Star was always this Kiss song. So, it's that perfect blend of kitsch and cool, which is kind of Ryan's character. Like he's kind of goofy, but he's super cool at the same time. And it was just a perfect fit. I mean, we were even trying to think of other bands that would be that same blend. Couldn't think of any other band that has the same blend as Kiss. They're a one-off. Um, so once we knew that, I mean, I went through so many different explorations of different ideas and, how do I pay homage to film music? Because this movie is a love letter. How can my score be a love letter to film music? And I think early on I was being too specific, as in like I'm going to focus on this genre of film music. So I'd have a very kind of 80s synth orientated action comedy thing, a la, Fault a Mile or something like that. And it was too specific for everyone. It wasn't like broad enough. It wasn't a broad enough love letter. So then, bringing in other inspirations, moving through the years, I probably capped it at about 95 and then added some kind of 2024 sprinkles. It is this kind of, it's a love letter to film music, but the guys that you wouldn't necessarily go to. Like, it's not so much John Williams. It's not so much like that big kind of sweeping orchestral thing. It's much more the other dudes, like the sort of more pop and rock orientated guys that came from bands and then became film composers, So it's a love letter to those guys. It's a love letter to that inspiration. Much at, the same as the movie. The movie's a love letter to movies and stunts, and 20 years of Dave's life was as a stuntman. So how do you incorporate that too? Stunts has this tough edge to it, so rock was really handy for that. And it's so many different aspects and so many things we talked about. It's difficult to kind of convey them all on one.
Yeah.
But whereas Bullet Train was more of like flicking through the channels, different genres, like they were mixed to some point, but there was very different styles throughout the whole film. This is lots of different styles, make it into one burger, and like that's the sound of the score as opposed to like flicking through different genres as you move through the movie. So it feels more homogenous in sound, I think.
Yeah, more homogenous. I love that you call it a love letter to film and stunts. It certainly seems like that. So I can understand the appeal as a composer hopping on that project, especially given your experience with David before. I'm wondering though, more generally, how do you choose which projects to involve yourself in? Like what makes something a draw as opposed to something that you're not as interested in tackling?
I wish I could say I was that picky. I just want to work. So if it's offered to me, normally I'll say yes. No, I think that was definitely the case earlier on in my career. I think now it's got to be, for me, it's got to light a fire with me. And I mean, it's baseline with Dave. Anything he does, I know I'm gonna want to be involved in it. Even, like he did that short for the Oscars on stunts. And he called me, he was like, "Will you look at the music?" I was like, "Yeah, do you want me to do it?" And so I ended up doing that just because we have that thing where anything he's involved in, I know it's going to make me tick and it's going to make me want to do it. So let's leave Dave out of it. In terms of other stuff, it's either got to interest me from a script perspective or, well, it normally always has to interest me from a script perspective. Otherwise, what's the point? But cast is important. Style is important. Am I gonna like I was saying earlier, if it's gonna warrant I'm going to call it a traditional action score, not necessarily going to kind of get excited about that. If I can do something different with it, if I can use that and then like push it into a different direction, sure, count me in. Because I'm trying to kind of craft that. What's my sound? What is my action sound? And like I was saying, it's very much kind of based off production and needle drops, and then moving it into like melding it with my orchestral background and classical background and kind of all of those things together. So I guess it's like, what's the canvas for a long story long, like what's the canvas going to allow me to do? And if it's something I've done before, or it's something that other people have done before, I'm less likely to be that up for it.
Got it. No, it's fascinating to hear that because I look at your filmography and it is so diverse and you have tackled a number of different genres. So it's really cool to see how you wrap your head around that and what draws you in.